in the last couple of days. Dan Graziano, I see you nodding. I mean, you're there at the owners' meetings, and you've been following this all over the place. What is your sense of that?
Yeah, very similar to what Matt is saying. Like the draft rise and fall is something of a myth. Like we talk about, mock drafts. He was up here, now he's down. I think when the teams really dig in on these guys, they find their level. And I think Ty Simpson is one of several very interesting quarterbacks that are not Fernando Mendoza that teams are going to look at in probably the middle rounds of the draft. Does that mean a second-round pick for Ty Simpson? Entirely possible. Could he sneak into the first round? Entirely possible. But much like Matt is saying, I'm not talking to a team that's indicating to me that, oh, we feel like he's a first-round talent, we have to take him there. And that includes several teams that have multiple first-round picks, right, that could use quarterback help short-term and or long-term. I do think these guys historically have tended to get pushed up the board, but I also think the teams are starting to learn their lessons about maybe not wanting to do that to the extent that they used to.
The Jets and the Browns are two of those that jump immediately to mind, Dan, teams that you think need quarterbacks and have multiple first-round picks. Tim Hasselbeck, you are a quarterback expert. And I'll remind everyone of just how right you were on Drake May months before the draft when there were some people that weren't as high on him. If someone were asking you, if the GM, if you were a scout, and they were saying, tell me exactly what Ty Simpson should be, what would you tell them?
Well, I would say, he has some film that would make you feel like he should be a first-round draft pick. The problem is, the recent history of guys that, don't have a huge sample size in terms of playing experience in college. It's been ugly. It has not been good. And so, look, that's reason to pause. Like, plain and simple, that's reason to pause. And then, there are other aspects of him in terms of physical stature and things of that nature that you wouldn't necessarily have him as a lock as a first-round draft pick. Now, I would say this. It's not unusual for guys to kind of be mocked in the first round, and then it happens where they don't. Like Will Levis a few years ago, or, players like that. Now, I would say this, and I know, Matt is putting a mock together, and he isn't going all 7 rounds and all of those things. Here's what I would say in terms of, ending up as a first-round draft pick. I don't think it's going to happen in the first half of the first round. But what I do think happens is it does not make sense, in my opinion, if I was a general manager, to draft a quarterback, in early second round. Because you don't get the 5th-year option. The value of the 5th-year option on a starting quarterback, because if you are right about Ty Simpson and you take him at 36, like you've really put yourself in a tough spot because you don't have as much time to evaluate him, and then you got to pay him real quarterback money sooner than you would have to otherwise. So I do think you have to get back into the first round if you're thinking of taking him in the top 40.
Very quickly, Dan.
Especially if you're not going to play him right away. Jordan Love being the example, right, that everybody would point to with the Packers. They knew they weren't going to pay him right away. Important to get him in the first round, so they had that 5th-year option.
Matt, finish it up.
Yeah, I think that's one way to look at it, Tim. I would say this. If you take a quarterback in round 1, you're married to that quarterback for 5 years. And we've seen examples of that not working. You take a quarterback in round 2 and it doesn't work out, you get right back in next year when we have Arch Manning, Dante Moore, Brendan Sorsby, a much richer quarterback class. So I think for the Jets, and maybe that's hedging, but it's the idea of let's not marry a quarterback in this draft. Let's date one, because the prospects next year look a lot better than what you have in this year's class because they ended up with that number 2 overall pick.
It's a good analogy. Matt Miller again, 7-round mock draft that I'll be studying intently on an airplane later today. Matt, thank you. Guys, in the NCAA tournament yesterday, Browns general manager Andrew Berry facing questions about Myles Garrett. Asked by Browns beat reporter Mary Kay Cabot whether he would unequivocally state that he is not trading Myles Garrett, here's what the GM said.
Myles is a career Brown. He is one of the faces of our organization. I think we've been very clear, both past and present, in terms of our feelings on that. So I understand all the questions. I'll be honest, I don't really want to waste a ton more breath on the topic.
So I understand what he's saying and why he's saying it. Dan, you're sort of nodding your head because you've obviously gotten that same answer a million times before. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is what he's always said. Last year, Myles Garrett made a big show of wanting out, saying it wasn't about the money. He did the Super Bowl media row all week last year in New Orleans, made this clear, and then he ends up signing an extension. But all along, the teams that called the Browns when he was making all this noise were being told the same thing. We aren't trading him. He's face of our franchise. We're keeping him. If anything, we're extending him, which they did. And now you have Andrew Berry saying the same thing. I don't love Greeny taking GMs at their word. No offense to anybody who's watching. But I think in this case, we can do it.
I guess we can. The question is whether or not it's a mistake. I understand, Tim Hasselbeck, the point that he's making. This guy is an all-time great in our uniform, and we want him to play his whole career here. There's part of me that does understand that mentality. There's another part of me that understands that if you just keep doing the same thing over and over again and hope to get different results, that's the definition of insanity. To me, you trade him and you get the treasure trove of draft picks that he would bring, and you start your rebuilding project there. What do you think of the decision, Tim?
Yeah, I agree with your latter point, which is it feels a little bit insane because other than his rookie year, Myles Garrett has had double-digit sacks every season. That's absurd. How good he is remarkable. And you know what? It hasn't done anything in terms of the Browns having team success because they've had issues at quarterback. The guys they've invested in haven't been any good. It says they have a new coach. It's just full rebuild mode. Full rebuild mode. You need to tear it down and build it back up, which is why, Greeny, exactly what you're saying. The value you would get for a player of his caliber would help you rebuild it. So, listen, you can have the best player, defensive player in football and be a team that is, well below 500. It just doesn't add up to team success, and it doesn't make any sense.
Dan.
The Browns have been in full rebuild mode for 30 years since they moved him. No, I'm not kidding. I mean, they moved him to Baltimore, and then they gave him a new team.
But because they're not doing the things to rebuild, right?
Right,
Yeah.
I know, and that's why it's crazy. I mean, I covered a game in Foxborough this past season where Myles Garrett had 5 quarterback sacks. It was one of the most incredible performances I've ever seen. They were not competitive in the game. The Patriots beat them easy with a guy they absolutely couldn't stop. So if you're the Browns, you take a step back and you look and say, what can we get? The Raiders got 2 first-round picks for Max Crosby not long ago in a trade that never ultimately ended up happening. But if you can get that, yeah, I mean, the Browns have tons of picks, but you get picks that high, you can control a whole draft.
Funny you should mention Max Crosby because in Vegas yesterday, head coach Clint Kubiak had this to say about Max Crosby at the owners' meetings.
It's kind of like he never left. I felt like we picked up another free agent signing once we got him back from Baltimore. Really excited about him leading our defense.
Okay, so the sound obviously a little bit fuzzy there, but you understood what he said. He's talking about Crosby being there and being all in and being all dedicated to the cause and all the rest of that stuff. And I have zero doubt that that is exactly true because that seems to track with everything I think I know of Max Crosby. And yet, Tim, I will say the same thing. The Vegas Raiders should trade Max Crosby again, get whatever they can for him, and continue this building of a roster that so far it seems they've done a pretty good job of doing around the quarterback they're going to take number 1 overall. What do you think?
I agree, but only if. Only if you can get close to the compensation that you had in place with Baltimore. Otherwise, it's going to look like you're selling a great player for pennies on the dollar. I think that's what makes this one really tricky. Got a huge, you get a great compensation package with Baltimore. And so if you have to trade Max Crosby away for something that's significantly less than that, then you're just going to feel like you've got ripped off in the deal. Like that to me is what makes this situation, because of what happened with Baltimore, completely unique. It's totally different, because if you didn't know what the previous compensation was, then you could be like, all right, hey, look, that's just what they're doing to rebuild and move on. But if it's a far cry from that, now it's going to leave such a horrible taste in everyone's mouth associated with Las Vegas.
What is your sense of it, Dan?
Yeah, they're not going to get what they were going to get from Baltimore now that it's all been out there about his knee and the issues. My understanding is that the Raiders aren't expecting Max Crosby to be able to be on the field and practice until possibly the middle of August. And if that's the case, it's going to be pretty tough to trade him before the start of the season. So if this perks up again, it probably is a trade deadline situation, meaning end of October during the season. You have to remember a couple things. One, Max Crosby wanting out of Las Vegas was a big reason that they agreed to that deal with Baltimore in the first place. And if that's no longer the case, then they don't have the same kind of incentive to move on from him. But to Tim's point, we talk about the should they trade, should they not trade. It's very rarely a black or white answer. It's what can you get? And the same thing with A.J. Brown. The Eagles don't want to just be rid of A.J. Brown. They have a valuable asset they feel like they need to be able to get something good for in order to justify the move. Same with Max Crosby.